After 5 straight months of price decline, the lowest mortgage application reading of the 21st century, and the fastest mortgage rate increase in modern American history, the US housing market is collapsing before our eyes. For years now, the house of cards climbed higher and higher as builders, real estate agents, loan officers, investors, and sellers celebrated while millions of young, hopeful Americans watched as prices grew out of reach, turning the American dream into a nightmare. The post-2020 real estate world is one that will be written about for decades, a showcase of greed, manipulation, and denial. But despite all the new evidence hinting at a future market crash, there are thousands of you watching this video with heavy skepticism. After all, most buyers today have grown up in a world where real estate prices only go one direction: up. In fact, according to the Case-Shiller index on the national level, we have seen price increases on a year-over-year basis every single year since 2011. And if I just do some simple math and generously assume that most people don't even begin caring about real estate until they're about 25, that means nearly everyone under the age of 37 never experienced an environment where home values decline. Simply put, real estate has been a printing press for over a decade, a reliable way to get rich using socially accepted forms of extreme leverage. Now there's one question on everyone's mind: is this time different? Are we headed into a massive correction? Well, to understand what we have to take a step back to 2007. Of course, some of you might be sick of this comparison. Plenty of people believe that this is nothing like the 2008 crash, but before you comment, I hope you at least give my theory a shot. You see, we as the public were led to believe that the 2008 crash had everything to do with poor people and subprime loans. The commonly accepted narrative is that dangerous loans, or loans given to people that were considered high-risk buyers, were sold off to banks with safety ratings that implied that these borrowers were much more reliable than what was reality. That's an overly simplistic explanation, but you get the point. However, this bad loan theory, which has been repeated by the media for over 15 years now, may be slightly wrong or misunderstood. Beneath the surface, the 2008 crash was extremely complicated. One of the primary things that the media narrative misses or excludes when talking about this particular crash is the role the investors played and how much they abused the corrupt mortgage industry. This isn't just an opinion. There are plenty of incredible academic studies that suggest poor people and bad loans were not the main source of the problem. It was actually the investors. They should have taken most of the blame, and I'm not talking about the big institutions. This is more so the mom and pop investors with property portfolios typically under a dozen units. In 2007, these types of investors dominated what I call the speculation market, pushing themselves into more and more risky products in what researchers later called the mortgage arms race. It was a competition that drove people to the edge of capitalism. When home prices are doing this, jumping as much as 10% in a year nationally speaking, and you're given the ability to leverage millions of dollars into an asset as a regular person, what you get is a modern-day gold rush filled with people operating at best in a legal gray zone with fraud littered all over the place. Just imagine you're a smart young professional in the Vegas area in 2004. You're seeing houses in some neighborhoods go up as much as 20 to 30% in 1 year. Your friends are getting rich, and you find out that you can acquire 2, 3, 4, even a dozen homes using loan officers who ensure you that you'll get approved. The entire system from top to bottom is corrupt, but you don't care about that. The guy writing your loan is working with the agent. The broker and everybody else in between you and the borrowed money is incentivized to get you the dollars no matter what your income is. They'll do everything in their power to make it work because after the paperwork clears, it's not their problem anymore. They've sold off the risk to some other bank in a game of real-life billion-dollar hot potato. They care about their commission, that's it, and as far as you're concerned, you're just legally taking money from some sort of local bank. All you have to do is hold the house or houses for a year and you'll make hundreds of thousands of dollars, potentially even millions. This strategy of maxing out leverage was common, especially in these hotbed cities, and it worked. People did get rich. But when it turns the other way, prices collapse in the same way they went up and you're left with a global crisis. Remember that investors are the first to bail when they get a whiff of a bear market, and this investor class that recklessly speculates in the market has not gone away. In fact, in the most recent run-up, I will argue that things are worse now than what was happening in the mid-2000s. But before I do, please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying the video. I asked for 3,000 likes in my last upload and got over 30,000, which is simply incredible. The video got over 1.5 million views, all thanks to you guys and your incredible feedback. Now back to the investor data. Just a week ago, Redfin released its quarterly investor report. In it, we find various pieces of evidence that serve as proof that we have similar problems with extreme investor speculation today, especially in those hotbed cities out west. According to Redfin's researchers, home purchases by investors fell 45.8% in the fourth quarter of 2022. To put that into perspective, this is an all-time record with data going back to 2000. It's worse than what we saw in 2008, which remember was the worst housing crash since the Great Depression. Now you would think that investors fleeing the market would result in more homes for us regular buyers who are looking for a place to live and not an asset to profit from, but unfortunately this is not the case. As a share of all home purchases, investors remain deeply involved. Nearly 18% of all homes sold in the fourth quarter of 2022 went to an investor. This is nearly 2 times higher than the peak of prices in 2007 and more than 3 times higher than what was considered normal back in 2000. In my opinion, residential real estate investing has simply gotten out of control. We have a craze going on in this country where everyone wants to become a landlord, and it's perceived to be the ticket to millions. The subreddit Real Estate Investing went from 10,000 members in 2018 to 1.6 million today. If you check your local biggerpockets.com forum, you'll see thousands of posts related to investing. This is true even in small markets like Cleveland, Ohio. No city is immune. And the worst part about all of this is that it's probably even more destructive than what these graphs seem to imply. You see, I got curious about the methodology Redfin used to get these investor numbers, and a few weeks ago I emailed them hoping to get a more in-depth answer. I eventually got a response, but it was not very detailed. However, in this most recent investor report, they coincidentally added much more information regarding the methodologies used to come up with these graphs, and it reveals something I had suspected. Remember how I said in the last crash mom and pop investors played a big role in the bubble? Well, without boring you to death talking about data collection, just understand this. Redfin analyzed county records across the US going back to the year 2000 to figure out how many sales involved investors. The natural question would be how they determine someone is an investor in these records. After all, there is no public list of investors they could use to filter. Well, according to this new edition, they determine someone is an investor by searching for buyers whose name includes at least one of the following keywords: LLC, Inc., Trust, Corp, Homes, and by ownership code by searching for deeds that include the word association, corporate trustee, company joint venture, and corporate trust. Now this, in my opinion, does find most investors, but it does have a flaw that is no fault of Redfin. It completely misses the amateur investor class. For anyone using their own name, a unique company name, or anything outside of those parameters, the data does not include it. And finding out what percentage of the overall market falls outside of this net is nearly impossible to gauge. But what we do know is there are plenty of people house hacking or taking advantage of various loan programs to quote-unquote invest in real estate. Just think about the people in your circle that bought homes with the direct or indirect intention of flipping or renting in the near future, and the means by which a lot of people do this is somewhat unethical yet encouraged by the government. For example, if you go to the bank and ask for a loan for a house you will occupy, they will give you an interest rate in line with the national average at the time. But if you tell the loan officer you don't plan on residing there, it will then be categorized as an investment which carries a higher interest rate. This is because investors are less likely to pay for a mortgage if trouble arises compared to someone that actually lives there. Obviously, if you're living in a house with your family, the incentive is much higher to keep paying as you have much more to lose. Nobody wants to get evicted, so in the bank's eyes, your loan is less risky. But here's the problem. Because of the way the mortgage industry has been set up, investors actively receive loans that are intended for regular people who just want a home to live in. The industry has yet to make an active push to separate the two categories in a meaningful way. In fact, this even pertains to government-sponsored programs. For example, the FHA loan. It allows certain home buyers to purchase with as little as 3.5% down, but it states that you must live there for the first year. This program was supposedly developed by the government to help regular people get houses, but now you have investors who commonly either commit mortgage fraud or use loopholes to participate. For example, they will use an FHA loan to purchase a triplex. We all know there's an occupancy requirement, meaning by the rules you have to live there in the home for at least a year to qualify. But in reality, there's almost no checks and balances on this, and even if you decide to stick to the rules, you can always live in the unit for a year and move on. Not exactly the type of incentive to keep investors away. There are thousands of these loopholes and tricks to leverage more and more money. If you ever want to know just how common abuse, fraud, and tricks are, look no further than Matthew Cox. Cox spent 13 years in prison after he was caught committing mortgage fraud in 2006. If you listen to his full interview on VLAD TV, your perception of the mortgage industry will undoubtedly change, and what he says about the current state is simply frightening. The system now is just as bad. At the end of the day, we don't really know the true number of investors in the market today and how much of an influence they have in making prices do this. But given the evidence, it's undeniable that there is at the very least a noticeable change in prices stemming from all sorts of investor activity. And this same effect that comes from greed that pushed prices up dramatically will now work in reverse as fear overtakes the market. Thank you guys for watching. As always, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment below letting me know how you feel about residential investors in today's environment.